welcome back to Blurr. In part 1 of our Cristiano Ronaldo biography, we explored the remarkable journey of a young boy from Madeira whose dream and determination set him on a path toward greatness. Now, in part 2, we continue that incredible story. This chapter follows Ronaldo as he rises from a promising talent to a global superstar. We'll witness his unforgettable years at Manchester United, his record-breaking dominance at Real Madrid, his challenges and triumphs with Portugal, and the relentless pursuit of excellence that defined his career. Through victories, setbacks, criticism, and glory, Cristiano Ronaldo never stopped pushing the limits of what was possible. Whether you're a football fan or simply inspired by stories of ambition and perseverance, this is the chapter where a dream becomes a legacy. So sit back, relax, and immerse yourself in the extraordinary life of Cristiano Ronaldo. Let's continue the journey. Chapter 6. Rise to Power. Real Madrid. The Galactico era. Ronaldo's 2009 transfer to Real Madrid for a then world record £80 million fee placed him at the center of one of the most star-studded eras in the club's history. Over 9 seasons in the club's history. Spain, he became Real Madrid's all-time leading goal scorer, finishing his time at the club with 450 goals in 438 appearances. An almost unbelievable scoring rate of more than a goal per game across nearly a decade. He won 4 Champions League titles with Real Madrid between 2014 and 2018, an unprecedented run of European dominance in the modern Champions League format, alongside 2 La Liga titles and numerous domestic cups. He was, across this period, frequently the top scorer in the Champions League, repeatedly breaking his own records for goals in the competition, Juventus, and a new challenge. In 2018, in a move that stunned the football world, Ronaldo left Real Madrid at the peak of his Champions League dominance to join Juventus in Italy's Serie A for a fee of around €100 million, a decision driven, by most accounts, by his desire for a new challenge and his stated ambition to win a Champions League title with a different club, something neither Messi nor nor most of the sport's other legendary figures had ever attempted at that stage of their careers. He won back-to-back Serie A titles with Juventus in 2019 and 2020, continuing to score at a rate that defied conventional expectations for a player now in his mid-30s, an age at which most elite footballers are well into decline. The statistical mountain, by the early 2020s, Ronaldo's accumulated statistics had moved into territory that no other player in the history of the men's game had reached. He became the all-time top scorer in Champions League history, a record that remains unbroken. He became the top goal scorer in the history of men's international football, surpassing the previous record held by Iran's Ali Day. Continued extending that record with Portugal well into his late 30s and early 40s. In October 2025, Ronaldo became the first player in football history to score 900 official career goals for club and country combined, a milestone that took place during his time with Al Nassr in the Saudi Pro League, the club he had joined in late 2022 following his contentious second departure from Manchester United. By 2026, at age 41, Ronaldo's career tally had climbed past 977 goals, and he had finally claimed a Saudi Pro League title with Al Nassr, closing out, even in the twilight of his career, one of the only major trophies that had eluded him. The second Manchester United spell. In 2021, Ronaldo returned to 21. Manchester United in an emotional homecoming, 18 years after his original departure for Real Madrid. The return generated enormous excitement, but the spell itself did not recapture the magic of his first stint at the club. United struggled as a team during this period, and the partnership between Ronaldo and the club's management grew increasingly strained. The relationship ended in late 2022, following an explosive television interview with Piers Morgan, in which Ronaldo openly and publicly criticized the club's ownership, the manager, and the broader direction of the institution, a level of public confrontation almost unheard of from a player still under contract. United terminated his contract by mutual consent shortly afterward, and Ronaldo moved to Al Nassr in Saudi Arabia, a transfer widely covered as both a major commercial milestone for Saudi football and a notable late career chapter for one of the sport's defining figures. The Messi rivalry, a two-decade story. Running parallel to every chapter of Ronaldo's rise was his rivalry with Lionel Messi, widely considered the greatest individual rivalry in the history of team sports. For nearly 2 decades, the two men dominated the Ballon d'Or conversation, faced off repeatedly in El Clasico matches between Real Madrid and Barcelona, and represented, in the eyes of millions of fans worldwide, two fundamentally different philosophies of greatness. Ronaldo's relentless, almost manufactured physical dominance and goal-scoring instinct, built through extraordinary discipline, against Messi's seemingly effortless, almost otherworldly, natural genius. By 2026, both men were still active, well into their late 30s and early 40s, Ronaldo with Al Nassr, Messi with Inter Miami in Major League Soccer, continuing to add to career totals that had already rewritten the record books. Ronaldo's career goal tally, sitting above 970, remained comfortably ahead of Messi's total in the 900s, with Ronaldo holding the all-time men's goal-scoring record. Messi, for his part, held the trophy that had eluded Ronaldo for his entire career: a FIFA World Cup won with Argentina in 2022. Chapter 7. Enemies and 2020. Controversies. The showboat criticism. Throughout his career, but especially in his early years at Manchester United, Ronaldo faced persistent criticism for what opponents, pundits, and even some teammates characterized as excessive individualism, a tendency to attempt difficult, flashy moves in situations where simpler play would have better served the team, and a reputation, fair or not, for diving and exaggerating contact to win free kicks and penalties. This reputation followed him for years and became a frequent talking point among rival fans and pundits, even as his statistical output made the criticism increasingly difficult to sustain on pure footballing terms. The off-field legal matter. In 2018, a woman 18, named Catherine Mayorga, filed a civil lawsuit against Ronaldo alleging that he had sexually assaulted her in a Las Vegas hotel room in 2009, a claim Ronaldo has consistently and firmly denied. The case became a significant and serious controversy, drawing extensive media coverage and raising difficult questions about how allegations against extremely powerful and wealthy public figures are investigated, litigated, and resolved. The civil case was ultimately dismissed in 2022 by a federal judge who ruled that Mayorga's legal team had violated rules during the litigation process. The case was not resolved on the underlying merits of the allegation itself. Ronaldo has maintained his innocence throughout. The Manchester United exit and public feuds. Ronaldo's second spell at Manchester United ended amid significant public controversy. His interview with Piers Morgan in November 2022, in which he criticized the club's owners, the Glazer family, manager Erik ten Hag, and what he characterized as a lack of progress and ambition at the club since Ferguson's retirement, was an extraordinary breach of the usual conventions governing player conduct, made all the more notable by Ronaldo's stature in the sport. Interview led directly to the termination of his contract. This was not the first time Ronaldo's outspokenness or public conduct generated controversy. Over the years, he has been involved in various public disagreements with managers, federations, and media figures, reflecting a personality that, while extraordinarily disciplined in matters of physical preparation, has never been shy about expressing frustration or disagreement publicly. Tax issues in Spain. In 2018, the time of his departure from Real Madrid, Ronaldo agreed to pay a fine of nearly €19 million and accepted a suspended prison sentence after admitting to 4 counts of tax fraud related to image rights income earned during his time in Spain. Between 2011 and 2014, he was not the only major footballer to face such charges during this period. Lionel Messi faced similar Spanish tax fraud charges around the same time, reflecting a broader crackdown by Spanish authorities on the way major sports stars structured their image rights earnings to minimize tax obligations. The Saudi Arabia question. Ronaldo's move to Al Nassr in the Saudi Pro League in December 2022 placed him at the center of broader debates about sports washing. The use of major sporting investments by governments with human rights records frequently criticized by international observers to improve their global public image. Critics argued that Ronaldo, by accepting an extraordinarily lucrative contract, reportedly worth hundreds of millions of dollars, was lending his global brand and credibility to a state-backed effort to improve Saudi Arabia's international reputation through sport. Ronaldo and his supporters countered that the move represented a legitimate career and business decision and pointed to his continued elite-level performance and his role in growing the popularity and competitive standard of Saudi football. Chapter 8: Psychology and Mindset. How Christianity and Mindset. Ronaldo actually thinks few athletes in the history of professional sport have been as openly and explicitly obsessive about self-discipline as Cristiano Ronaldo, and understanding the psychological roots of that obsession requires returning to the same childhood that shaped every other dimension of his story. Discipline as a response to chaos. Ronaldo grew up in a household defined, in significant part, by his father's lack of control over his drinking, over his finances, over his own life trajectory. The chaos and instability of that environment appears to have produced in his son the opposite reaction: an almost totalizing need for control over every controllable variable in his own life: his diet, his sleep, his training schedule, his body fat percentage, his recovery protocols. All of it represents a level of granular self-management that goes far beyond what is required simply to be a great athlete. It reads, to those who study the connection between childhood environment and adult behavior, as a direct psychological response to having grown up in a household where the central adult figure could not exercise that same control over himself. "I don't drink alcohol," Ronaldo has said in multiple interviews, connecting the choice directly and without hesitation to watching what alcohol did to his father, the hunger that mockery created, the mockery he experienced as a 12-year-old at the sporting academy, for his accent, poverty, for being visibly different from the more comfortable mainland Portuguese kids around him, appears to have become one of the foundational engines of his competitive drive, where some children might have been permanently damaged by that kind of sustained social humiliation at such a vulnerable age. Ronaldo converted it into fuel with a consistency that has defined every subsequent chapter of his career. The showboating young winger who needed to prove himself at Manchester United. The player chasing Messi's Ballon d'Or lead for years, the 41-year-old, still scoring goals against players half his age, seemingly still needing to prove something to someone. The mirror test. Ronaldo has been widely, and sometimes mockingly noted, across his career, for his evident and unapologetic self-confidence, his comfort with his own physical appearance, his willingness to celebrate his own goals with elaborate, rehearsed celebrations, his open ambition to be recognized as the best player in the world. Critics have sometimes characterized this as vanity or excessive ego. A more generous and, by most psychological accounts, more accurate reading is that this self-presentation is the hard-won opposite of the boy who arrived in Lisbon at 12 years old with nothing, mocked for everything about himself that he could not control, the meticulously constructed physique, the confident public persona, the refusal to ever publicly express doubt about his own ability. These are not naturally occurring traits. They are, by every available account of his upbringing, deliberately built. In the same way he deliberately built his goal-scoring technique, his physical conditioning, and his finishing ability, through relentless, intentional repetition, until the thing he wanted to be true became true. Quotes that define the man. talent without working hard is nothing. My father didn't have the opportunities I have had. That's why I never stop. I don't have to prove anything to anybody. I just have to prove it to myself. Dreams are not what you see in your sleep. Dreams are things which do not let you sleep. I always give my best. Train hard. Work hard. The goals give my best. Train hard. Work hard are a result of that work. Chapter 9. Legacy and Lessons. What he has actually built, by any statistical measure available in the sport's long history. Cristiano Ronaldo is the most prolific goal scorer the men's game has ever produced. He holds the record for most goals in men's international football history, the record for most goals in UEFA Champions League history, and, as of October 2025, the distinction of being the first player ever to score 900 official career goals. A tally that, by mid-2026, had climbed past 970. He has won 5 Ballon d'Or awards, matching the historic peak of his rival Lionel Messi for a period before Messi pulled further ahead. He has won league titles in 4 different countries: England, Spain, Italy, and Saudi Arabia, a level of sustained excellence across multiple footballing cultures and styles of play that very few players in history have matched. He won, in 2016, the one trophy that had eluded him for the first decade of his career. A major international title with Portugal, delivered not through his legs in the final, but through the sheer force of his presence and leadership, even while injured on the sideline. Off the pitch, Ronaldo built one of the most commercially valuable personal brands in the history of sport, becoming, at various points, the most followed individual on multiple social media platforms in the world, and one of the highest-earning athletes on the planet through a combination of salary, endorsements, and his own R7 product lines. What he revealed about greatness Ronaldo's career stands as one of the most powerful real-world demonstrations of a principle that is often stated in sports, but rarely proven with this much statistical and longitudinal force. That extreme sustained, intelligently applied discipline can close, and in certain respects exceed, gaps that appear, in childhood and adolescence, to be matters of pure natural talent. He was not, by the consistent testimony of those who coached him as a teenager, the single most naturally gifted player of his generation, in the way that Messi clearly was. What he had, instead, was an almost unmatched capacity to convert every form of adversity, poverty, mockery, an absent father, early professional criticism, a heart condition that could have ended everything, into additional fuel for a training and self-improvement regimen so extreme that it has reshaped what professional athletes in every sport now consider possible for late career longevity. 3 lessons that matter. Lesson 1. The gap between talent and dominance is built, not given. Ronaldo's early Manchester United years are the most instructive part of his entire career precisely because he was not yet great. He was talented, flashy, inconsistent, and criticized. The player who would go on to become the most statistically dominant goal scorer in the sport's history had to be built, year by year, through punishing repetition, through accepting criticism from Ferguson and senior teammates, through completely restructuring his body and his daily habits. Anyone looking for proof that sustained, intelligent effort can compound into something that looks, from the outside, like pure genius need look no further than the distance between the 18-year-old who humiliated Manchester United's defense with flashy stepovers and the 41-year-old still scoring goals at the highest level. 2 decades later. Lesson 2. Pain, properly directed, does not have to be destiny. Ronaldo's father died from the slow, grinding consequences of alcoholism, having never been able to overcome the trauma he carried home from war, or build the close relationship with his son that both of them, by every account, wanted. Cristiano took the most painful lesson available from that loss, watching addiction slowly consume someone he loved, and built, in direct and explicit response. One direct and explicit response. one of the most disciplined physical and personal regimens in the history of professional sport. The cycle that could easily have repeated itself did not. This is not a simple or universal formula. Not everyone who witnesses a parent's addiction responds with this kind of disciplined transformation. But Ronaldo's life stands as a powerful demonstration that the response to inherited pain is not predetermined. Lesson 3. Rivalry, when it is taken seriously rather than personally resented, can be one of the most powerful engines of sustained excellence available to a human being. The two-decade competition between Ronaldo and Messi pushed both men to heights that, in the absence of the other, neither might plausibly have reached. Ronaldo has spoken about Messi's dominance during their early rivalry years with evident, sometimes painful honesty about how much it drove him. Rather than allowing that comparison to curdle into bitterness or excuse-making, Ronaldo used it the same way he used every other source of pain in his life, as fuel for a relentless, specific, and ultimately successful campaign of self-improvement. We began with a question: how does a child born into desperate poverty on a remote Atlantic island, raised by an alcoholic father, and nearly not born at all, become the most statistically dominant goal scorer the sport of football has ever produced? The answer is not really a story about talent. Although the talent was real and considerable from the very beginning, it is a story about the conversion of pain into discipline, and discipline, sustained over more than 2 decades with almost no interruption, into a level of dominance that has no real precedent in the sport's history. The boy who was mocked for his accent built a body that no longer needed defending. The boy whose father could not control his own decline built a life of total, granular self-control. The boy who watched another man, Messi, claim the trophy he wanted most, year after year, for nearly half a decade, simply refused to stop training until the gap closed. He very nearly was never born. He very nearly never made it past the mockery of his first year in Lisbon. He very nearly had his career ended at 15 by a heart condition, discovered almost by accident. He kept playing anyway. He is, remarkably, still playing, at 41 years old. In 2026, still scoring goals, still chasing the next record, still by every indication, refusing to be small. I've worked extremely hard to get where I am, and I think that's evident in everything I do on the pitch. Cristiano Ronaldo, thank you for joining us for the conclusion of our Cristiano Ronaldo biography. From the streets of Madeira to the grandest stages in world football, Ronaldo's story is a testament to discipline, resilience, sacrifice, and an unwavering belief in oneself. His journey reminds us that talent may open doors, but dedication, hard work, and persistence are what create legends. If you enjoyed this audiobook, please support the channel by hitting the like button, subscribing to Blurr, and turning on the bell icon so you never miss future biographies, true stories, and immersive audiobooks. And we'd love to hear from you. Where do you rank Cristiano Ronaldo among the greatest athletes and footballers of all time? Leave your thoughts in the comments below and join the conversation with fellow listeners. Thank you for spending this time with us. Until our next story, keep dreaming big, keep pushing forward, and thank you for listening to Blurr.